was truly great listening to a panel focused on taxation and ways to incentivize growth via taxation. And the immediate next panel, the session I'm about to introduce, session number 5, focuses on a crucial sphere that is for the first time formally on the agenda, not just of the Hellenic Entrepreneurs Association, but across Europe as a key pivotal element in European strategy. The contribution of defense and security to European economic development, pinpointing to the dimension of dual-use technologies, a powerful lever for growth in other parts of the world for decades and decades, but in Europe now a huge bet that ties extremely well with artificial intelligence, reindustrialization as defined by ENE, with bridges virtually with all aspects of the services and the innovation industries of Greece and Europe. So, without further ado, I want to introduce our keynote speaker.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Madame Goulart, Professor of Practice, Global Affairs and Geopolitics at the Bocconi School of Management, Deputy Governor of the Bank of France in the period 2018-2022, who is joining us online. And in the meantime, in the panel, under the moderation of Stavros Ioannidis from Sky TV, come Andrea Barbighelata, SME Counselor of Aerospace and Defense Industry Association of Europe, and Ms. Paraskevi Papadoniou, Head of Unit at the DG DEFIS of the European Commission, the Defense, Single Market and Hybrid Threats of the European Commission Division. I surrender the panel to Mr. Ioannidis and above all to Madame Goulart, who was also the Minister of Defense of France. An identity, Madame Goulart, that is not on your CV that I have in front of me, but is surely with you. We have actually one more practitioner from Bocconi here, Professor Ngeni Kalanis, who was describing the true excellence that you bring to the table always with your insights from your various roles in government. I pass the stage to you, and I hope that I have fulfilled the bridge that will allow you to extend the keynote speech to this forum. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me well. The strange thing is that we made all the tests before, and I could see the room. Now I don't see anyone. But if you can hear me, it's the most important thing. So first of all, I wanted to thank Mr. Hadjiminas for the invitation. The only bad thing is for me to be online and not in Athens, which would be much nicer. The topic of this panel is very timely and, to be honest, very serious. As Draghi wrote 1 year ago, Europe faces conventional warfare on the eastern border and hybrid warfare already everywhere, including attacks against democracy. So we have to take it very seriously. Russia has dramatically increased its defense spending since 2022. This is something many people don't have in mind. They have more capacities now than at the beginning of the invasion, and they produce, for example, much more tanks than we can. I will try to be brief for a very complex topic and tackle 3 points. The first one is on the difference between the math and politics, if I may. So if you do the math, it is quite simple. There was a brilliant article in the FT during the summertime from Mrs. Nice saying that more or less as Russia has a GDP of 10% of the GDP of the European Union, more or less the one of Italy, well, and as we are much bigger and they spend 6% of their GDP for defense, it's only 0.6% for us. So it's feasible. And on average, our debt in Europe is below the levels of Japan, China, US, UK, etc. But in my opinion, politics matter a little bit more than that, even if it's perfectly correct. So why does politics matter? First of all, we need to make sure that economy and military expectations converge. It is not a given. You may need, for example, immediately to be equipped, so you buy outside Europe, which is not going to provide growth inside the country. The ECB, and this is an interesting point because I spent some years there at the Governing Council with my governor, and I remember the ECB never wrote anything about defense, and they wrote 2 pieces in their blog this summer. So the second point is that we must overcome the lack of centralized decision-making capacity in Europe, above all on foreign affairs and security issues, but not only on budgetary issues. We spend our money separately. Defense remains a member state's competence, which makes the kind of aggregation I mentioned before on the map a little bit tricky, because it's not that easy. We have some tools at European level, competition, for example, or trade, but diplomacy and security remain at member states level with very heterogeneous perceptions and preferences. It's perfectly normal. It has to do with geography. For example, in Greece, you have a very big neighbor not far away from you, which is not perceived in the same way elsewhere in the western part of Europe. So we should not complain. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying where we are is the result of the previous treaties. We should act to integrate further in order to make this aggregation for 100 million of people, many means, many savings, something which is a reality. Right now, joint procurements are not even 20% of the defense expenditures, and we must confess that each and every government likes very much the return. I put money in the European pot, but I want the research center to be in my country, or this kind of return, which, by the way, destroyed a little bit the space policy in Europe, to take one example. So keep in mind, at this stage, the European Commission is doing a lot, but they can only incentivize and coordinate. They cannot decide completely for Europe as a whole. Nevertheless, there is a big shift in Brussels, and this is my second point. There is a new landscape. The first sign of this new landscape and new sense of urgency is that you have many reports and strategic compass and white paper and strategy on defense industrial priorities. I will just mention the last white paper, Readiness 2030, published last spring, asking for by choosing some priorities for production, 7 priorities, including, for example, drones, as you can imagine, and encouraging mobility, because we need to be able to move troops and materials towards east, and of course to transform our industrial bases. Which is the second point. There is a real shift in Brussels, not only because there is a defense commissioner, but because the idea of a single market is making progresses. You may remember that the treaty is very, very prudent on military stuff. And here we move to one of the main questions. Can we expect some spillovers of what is going to happen on the defense field on the civil economy, or all the dual things? And there are several studies, very interesting, where economists insist on 2 things. The first thing is the multiplier. Some of them consider that if you put €100 in defense, you will get more as spillovers. Some others are less convinced. In any case, they all stress the need to innovate and give priorities to R&D. I cannot quote all the papers. You have one from the Keeler Institute, Guns and Growth, The Economic Consequence of Defense Buildup, Guntram Wolf, Bruegel, the European Defense Industry in a Hostile World. They converge really on one point, which is that the more we boost innovation and research through defense budgets, the better it is. For example, in the US, according to Guntram Wolf, 45% of total public R&D is financed through the defense budget. And as the US has a huge defense budget of $800 billion, of course, it is a lot. In Europe, to compare, we only have 4% of defense that is coming from military expenditures. So you see, we have a large margin of maneuver. And there is also another study mentioned by Draghi in his report from Mr. Moretti on the intellectual spoils of war. So in any case, taking into account the technological gap we need to overcome, there is some perspective, even if, once again, some economists are very prudent. By the way, thank you for ENE, because you managed to make the FT publish a big read this morning on the topic I was supposed to tackle, so it shows how important it is, and you will find many good ideas in this piece. So the European Commission, third thing, is also encouraging what she called the European preference. It is the idea to spend more, to spend better, but above all to spend European. Of course, it is obvious. If you buy outside Europe, it's not going to provide jobs in our factories, and it is not going to have the same spillover effect on research. Fourth pillar of what the Commission is trying to do, it is the attempt to mobilize more financing. The SAFE fund with 150 billions. The EIB is now entering these territories with its security and defense action plan. The Commission proposed to use the escape clause of the Stability and Growth Pact. As a French person, I feel rather embarrassed because we have escaped already, if I may say so. And there are proposals under the so-called ReArm Europe umbrella of 800 billion from the Commission. There is also the money coming from the member states. You all noticed the big shift in Germany recently. Mario Draghi proposed even to borrow the money for this and to have a safe asset, which is something still in discussion. My third point, and I finish with that, what can business do, as you are all representatives of a very dynamic economy? And by the way, I'm very glad that Greece is well and fine, because when I was at the European Parliament, we made a lot of battle to make sure that it will be the case. And it is the Greek merit, the merit of the Greek people and you entrepreneurs to have done this. So really bravo for all your achievements. So what can you do? You can scale up. You have maybe noticed last week a great announcement that Leonardo, Thales, and Airbus are going to work together in the field of space. The more we invest cross-border, and I know that some of you did in France as well, the more private risk is shared, the better it is for the cohesion of Europe. Second point, I mentioned it already, I will be very brief. The key element is research and development, which of course requires educated people, good universities, skills, but you can send some to Bocconi. We will be happy to have more Greek young people or elsewhere. So we need to have to put the bar very high. The reason of the dominance of the United States is the quality of research, but very often also with our own children moving to the US. And the very last point on which I will conclude and insisting a little bit is that you can do some lobbying, in my opinion. I'm old enough to remember the 1992 Delors single market objective, certainly you remember as well. At that time, business was a driving force in favor of political integration, not only the integration of the single market, but it was meant to be a building block for a political Europe. It is, if I may say so, enlightened self-interest from your part. First of all, because stability is key for business. I insist a little bit, because the title of the panel is the contribution of economy to defense, but think that security is a huge contribution to business. Because the risk of rising insecurity is a threat to freedom, of course, and democracy, but also to growth. The more you plead for stability and integration, the better, because there are centrifugal forces right now. Secondly, as I said before, even if there is a margin among economists, spillovers exist, and the more we invest in R&D, the more we will have spillovers. And third, you can talk to politicians, you can explain the math, but you can explain them that they can do something, which is to give up part of their national prerogatives to build something bigger. It would give us also good vibes. I think the society desperately needs people who push for something sustainable and ambitious, and not only that we suppose we will defeat nationalists without proposing anything. So democracy matters. What is at stake is our future. People should be on board. Companies are places where you also have employees, clients, where you have influence on the society. So I hope you can do your part, and I'm confident that you will. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It's my turn to welcome you all, and with your permission, since we are on a very strict time frame, I would like to skip introductory remarks and move on to the questions. And I would like to address a question to you, Mrs. Papadoniou. What are the lessons learned from Ukraine? I know that the European Commission has been monitoring the situation very closely, but what are those lessons learned? How can we implement those lessons in order, and by we I mean the European Union, in order to boost economic development, but also in order to enhance business in Greece, in other member states, and eventually to create an autonomous defense system that can support European defense needs.
Καλησπέρα. Ευχαριστώ για την πρόσκληση του ΕΝΕ. Θα μιλήσω στα αγγλικά, βέβαια. Είμαι η Εύη Παπαντονίου, δουλεύω στην Ευρωπαϊκή Επιτροπή, στη DG DEFIS. Είμαι υπεύθυνη για την εσωτερική αγορά στην άμυνα και για την αντιμετώπιση των υβριδικών απειλών. I will switch to English also for the rest of the panel. And saying, I think Ukraine, you mentioned, is a wake-up call, the brutal aggression of Putin to Ukraine back 3 years, half an ago. And then with the constant hybrid warfare that Europe territory is tested, not various, we've seen, not least that yesterday, Brussels, where I'm coming from, airports being closed, the airbase being closed because of drones, actually, that we have to counter. So this is a wake-up call. So as Mrs. Goulart was saying, we are in the mindset shift for defense readiness. Defense Readiness 2030 is something that the leaders, the EU leaders, gave us as a roadmap to follow. And from the Commission point of view, we are trying to facilitate the nations, the sovereign nations, the 27 sovereign nations, to be able to rearm, to be ready by 2030. Ukraine, and no, I would say that the Commission angle under the treaties, we're doing an industrial policy. We really try to support the competitiveness of a strong European industrial base, so to be able to supply the armed forces of the 27 member states. So what we learned from Ukraine with speed, of course, at war conditions, speed, agility, and innovation. With cheap materials, coming from the civil engineers, very often in parkings, in garage actually, they were able to build quickly and test an efficient army of drones and anti-drones that the rest of European industry were not able to do this such quicks. So the lessons, as we say, we have learned, and we try, as Commissioner Kubilius actually, the Commissioner responsible for defense in the European Commission says, is that the European industry, defense industry, has to learn a lot from the Ukrainians in terms of quick testing, quick loops, validation of products, so that bringing together the armed forces, the brigades, basically, which is also the 27 member states, is the armed forces who are the buyers of the final product, so that closer with the industry. So in that sense, we are preparing a transformation roadmap that the Commission will publish next week. And transformation is the key word. Transformation in terms of the ecosystem. So we really want to bring together industry, dynamic defense industry, the scale-ups, the startups, the mid-caps, but also large players, because we need everybody, and the armed forces together, so that we can bring more technology, deep technology in the armed forces, more innovation, more agility and speed, and then, of course, but I will not maybe develop this question, is how can we unlock finance also? We can unlock more private finance for companies to be able to scale up quickly. I will stop here.
Thank you. So, Mr. Andrea Barbachelata, as a counselor for small and medium enterprises, my question is this. You know, we're usually referring to the Greek paradox, which is that Greece is spending like more than 3.5 GDP to defense programs, but although there are many SMEs in the defense ecosystem, they only receive like little or no share of the defense spending pie. So as an SME counselor and representing the Aerospace and Defense Industries Association of Europe, how could you help those enterprises, those small and medium businesses to grow and take a bigger share of the defense spending, not only in Greece, but in general?
Thank you very much. I know we are under time pressure because of me, mainly, but I really need to spend a word thanking ENE for inviting me and for the wonderful hospitality that's really due and that's special. And thank you for this question. Actually, yes, ASD, which is the, let's say, voice of large companies in defense in Europe, has decided more or less 2 years ago to give more voice to SMEs. And in this direction, it's not only voice, of course, it's practical support. What we did were to also make 2 specific actions. One was to develop a digital platform to facilitate, let's say, matchmaking with large companies, with international companies, including exceptionally Ukrainian companies validated by their government. And we have produced this document, which is available on this platform, but it's public, so your association can deliver it, where we recommend some measures. Let me say, especially also in view of the next multi-annual financial framework, which it's like nearly 2 trillion values for the period 2028-2034. And of course, it will have a great impact on companies and especially on SMEs. Let me say just one thing about, I was diligent. I stayed here the full day listening to the extent that I could, also the Greek part. And, whatever was said, both the criticalities and what you just mentioned and the positive things are very much amplified for SMEs. So the difficulties like in finding the skills or doing research and development are amplified for SMEs. Now, let me get to a very specific point. I think at the European level, SMEs from Greece are doing a very good job. I think the participation, some of you may know a very, I would say, high-quality program which the Commission launched 4 years ago, which is EDF, European Defence Fund. And I think in this EDF, which anyway is delivering about 1 billion euro per year to European companies to develop innovative defense systems. And I think Greece is either 4th or 5th in participating to this program. So I think at international level, they are very active. I think also the recommendation from the keynote speaker about lobbying, it's very important because we need to lobby. And it's not by chance that I mention EDF. I think EDF, it's a perfect program. Everything can be improved, but it's a perfect program because of the way they incentivize involvement of SMEs. So I would recommend this scheme, and I refer in particular to bonuses given to large companies to involve SMEs, which, as far as I know, is quite unique. It's not present in large research programs such as Horizon, and is not, as far as I know, applied at national level, at least in Italy. And I think it has proven to be a very effective program. And so I would suggest to lobby for increase of these incentives and also outside the EDF.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Mrs. Saligoulou, I'm coming to you. So I was wondering, by listening to your keynote speech, if the SMEs and larger businesses in Europe that belong to the defense sector have the capacity to produce enough defense products to meet European needs, and how could we boost the production capacity of European businesses in order to meet those targets, since there are large funds being allocated through EDF or through the Readiness 2030 program, Rearm Europe. So I was wondering if we can achieve those targets on time, and if European member states need to maybe use cross-border investments in order to meet those targets.
No, thank you. It's an excellent point. Maybe one word, what Andrea Barbagelata just said. I mean, when I was pleading for lobbying, it was to plead for lobbying a little bit beyond the fact to get more money. I want to be sure that people understood. I mean, I think we should all, of course, do our business, and it is perfectly legitimate, but also understand that we are part of Europe. It was just a footnote. So on the SMEs, I think what was just said before about Ukraine, and it's great that you said it, Mrs. Papantonio, because what happened in Greece showed that on the one hand, we need technology, we need to be ready, which requires, as I said, skills and capacity. So it takes some years before you really build the capacities. But at the same time, the Ukrainians are showing that their capacity to work in a very decentralized way, to invent tomorrow's weapons, and to also stop the invasion. We should always pay tribute to what they did. They had Russia in front of them, and years after, even with the very high human costs, they managed to defend more or less their country. So this idea that we need to be super equipped is something that could bring us nowhere. I insist, for example, the model is not to be the United States of America. What we want is first to defend our territory, to be ready to block all intrusions in our democracies, etc., etc. We don't have imperialistic views. This is not the DNA of Europe, and it should not be the way we one day use overproduction. So I want to be very clear on that. What we need is to be serious in deterring people to attack us. And some attacks right now, it was mentioned, are drones on airports or some cyber attacks, etc. So, of course, we need to be well equipped. It goes from the terrestrial thing to marine and to the air and maybe nuclear forces. But there is a lot to do at I would not say low cost, but in a less costly way. And I insist, what we could use, and that's the reason why at this moment we cannot aggregate our demand, but if we use more the procurement, if we make sure that we standardize what we use, we will pay less for that. And it will open the way for our SMEs.
Thank you. Ms. Papantonio, how far are we standing from the point of having a joint procurement system in Europe? There have been some initiatives, like the SkyShield initiative, like the joint Greek and Polish initiative, but how realistic is the scenario?
Joint procurement is really the mantra for us. So that is really the key objective we want to incentivize. Of course, we cannot force sovereign nations in procuring together, but we see that now we have fragmented national markets, 27 national markets, and armed forces. They're used to buy from a certain suppliers, most of them with a national identity. So by making them working together, also making industries working together, trust within member states will increase. And this is the best way to avoid duplication, to be able to scale up, to have economies of scales also, more efficient, because if you have 3, 4, 5 member states buying together the same product, also through the full life cycle, so maybe participating from the research and development to the prototype, and then to the manufacturing, to the maintenance, to the full life cycle, then you have economies of scales, and then nations and industry work together. So we have put tools. The European Defence Fund to incentivize cooperation is one of them, and 8 billion for this MFF. For the next budgetary cycle, we propose to 5 times more increase the current budget for the defense window. But we also have, it was mentioned also, the safe loans that we guarantee at the European level. We've seen 19 member states, and this is working together for joint procurements, actually, and Greece is one of them. Of course, this is their sovereign choices where they want to invest, but we incentivize joint procurements. We give the carrots, actually. We also incentivize, my last point will be actually on simplification of procurements, and in particular of common procurements. We have rules that have been, are perceived as very lengthy and complex at the European level to buy defense systems. And with the omnibus simplification proposal that the Commission has tabled in June earlier this year, we have proposed to cut significantly red tape and less administrative burden, and we incentivize common procurement by at least 3 member states when they buy together off-the-shelf products that will be able for them to rearm to reach their goals by 2030. So I'm not saying that everything is perfect, but we have a kind of pathway, and we really want to go in this direction to incentivize more common procurements.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And we will conclude this session with a final question to Mr. Barbagellata. So if you can answer really quickly, what are the skills needed for the SMEs in order to boost economic development and, join programs, bigger programs, common programs, joint procurement programs, etc.?
Well, the answer is really easy because, of course, we need the STEM skills. I have to say there is such a hunger for skills that we invented all possible ways to widen the panorama of potential candidates. So it's not only mathematics, engineering, and so on, but we go also to philosophy because they bring something new. So that's the easy answer. And I will say on that. I can only add one thing. We have been talking today a lot of upskill, reskill, and so on. I think these are, let's say, temporary measures, because I think our government, our national government, should work strongly to increase the percentage of graduated people, because especially, I would say, in the Mediterranean part of Europe, including Italy, the level of high school preparation is too low. It's 1 out of 4 people, while the average of Europe is 2 out of 4. So I think this is the real strategic aim that our government should take. Hope that helps.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for being here with us. Good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, and thank you so much.